Hi, my name is Chris and this is Battle Nonsense. About 4 months ago I did a netcode analysis for Playerunknown's Battlegrounds, which was still in closed beta back then. Since the game was not optimized yet, it was quite a challenge to get my tests done, as I could hardly achieve the high frame rates that I need for my network delay tests. The results, however, were not bad, as at that time the network performance was even better than what H1Z1 King of the Kill offered. So if you have not seen my original netcode analysis of Playerunknown's Battlegrounds, then you can find a link to that video in the description down below. Now, since my first test, the developers have done a lot to optimize the performance and the stability of both the game client and the server. Just last week they released yet another update that should also have an impact on the network performance, which is why I thought that now is a good time for an update video where I test the game again and tell you about its current state. So let's begin with the update rates. When I capture my network data with Wireshark, then we can see that the game still does not send and receive data at fixed rates. I also noticed that there seems to be still some packet splitting happening for the data that we receive from the server. So when I take 30 updates and then calculate the average delay between these updates, then we are still looking at about 40 updates per second that the client sends to the server and about 20 updates per second that the client receives from the server. In comparison, H1Z1 King of the Kill sends about 40 updates per second in both directions. Now, how about the delay that two players experience when they play on the same server? In my original test, I measured an average delay of 98 milliseconds for damage, 104 milliseconds for the gunfire animation, and 100 milliseconds for the player movement. After the latest patch, the average delays did sadly not improve much and are quite similar to those from H1Z1 King of the Kill. Now, before I tell you why it feels like the gameplay experience is better today than it was 4 months ago, even though the network delays didn't change, I want to show you one more test which I did to find out if the developers changed their lag compensation, which caused that players who have a low ping to the server receive damage very far behind cover when they get shot by a player who has a very high ping to the server. So in this example here, the target player has a ping of 18 milliseconds to the server, while the shooter has a ping of 268 milliseconds. And as you can clearly see, there was no change here. The game will still simply register the hit and the player who has a ping of just 18 milliseconds will receive it with a great delay far behind cover. So let's face it, these results look kinda depressing. However, I didn't play Battlegrounds since I last tested it 4 months ago, and I can clearly feel that the gameplay experience improved a lot since then. The reason why the game feels better now, even though the network delays didn't really decrease, is actually quite simple to explain. In my network delay tests, I always aim for at least 144 FPS, as otherwise the frame rate would be lower than the refresh rate of my monitors, and then you could hardly compare the results to those of the other games I tested. So to achieve that frame rate in my original test, I not only had to set all graphic options to the lowest value, I also had to go into the config file of the game and lower the render scale to just 20%. With those graphics the game was effectively unplayable, but it was good enough for my tests. When I then changed my graphic settings back to something where I could see an enemy who was more than 10 meters away, then my frame rate would usually be somewhere around 50 FPS. So combined with the issues that the servers had, I simply couldn't get an enjoyable gameplay experience back then. Now, 4 months later, all the optimizations that went into the game had a pretty significant impact on the frame rate that my systems are able to run the game at. I don't have to go and edit the config file anymore to achieve the frame rate required for my tests, and I usually get around 90 FPS now when I play the game. So, since I was able to run my original tests at 144 FPS, the delay results are very similar to those that I measure now after the latest patch, since there were no significant changes that reduced the network delay. However, the optimizations that were done to the client and the server did have a very noticeable impact on the gameplay experience, as the game now runs at higher frame rates and with much fewer hiccups. For the near future, I hope that the developers keep optimizing the game client and the game server. I would also like to see them increase the rate at which the server sends data to the client in order to reduce the network delays. I'd also appreciate if the game would show me my ping to the game server, as well display warning icons when there's some kind of issue with my connection to the server or the server's performance. Players would also benefit from having servers available in more locations, which would already mitigate the issue where players with a low ping receive damage very far behind cover. However, further steps should be taken to address this issue with the lag compensation, because it's really infuriating to die behind cover while you have a ping of just 18 milliseconds to the server. So I hope that you enjoyed the updated netcode analysis of Playerunknown's Battlegrounds, and I will keep you updated on the changes that the developers do to the networking and the servers of this game. If you like this kind of content where I take a look at the inner workings of video games and show you how these affect your experience, then you can help me to cover the costs of this channel by supporting me on Patreon. The link is in the description below. Also, if you want to stay up to date on what I'm currently working on, then you can follow me on Twitter or Facebook. The links are also in the description of this video. And if you don't want to miss the next one, then you might want to subscribe to my channel and click on that bell icon below this video to receive a notification when I upload the next one. So if you enjoyed this video, then please give it a like, subscribe for more, and I hope to see you next time. Until then, have a nice day and take care. My name is Chris and this was Battle Nonsense.